In the video today, we're going to have a look at making sterile rye grain, which we can then turn into grain spawn once we've injected our liquid culture. This is a really important part of the cultivation process, and we've got everything we need in front of us. We've got 2 mason jars, some water, pan for boiling, hot plate for drying our rye grain, a piece of scaffold netting, and a nice towel. Now, we're going to be using rye grain, as I said. Now, the first thing we need to do is just basically measure out how much it's going to be using. So, if we fill our mason jar about just over half full, that's more than enough actually. Once that's been hydrated and cooked, that will swell up to the right amount that we're going to use. So if we pop that in our pan, and then we're going to do another one, I think. We're going to fill that one up. I'm going to do a tiny little bit less in this one than I did the last one. That should be fine. So we're going to then pop that into our pan. Now if we bring the pan over here, what we need to do next is to start hydrating our rye grain. So we're going to put 1 litre of water in. Give that a swirl around. And we're going to leave that, before we get on to the next stage, for at least 12 hours. Some people say 24, I've always done 12 hours. If we leave it longer than 24 hours, we run the risk of the rye grain starting to germinate, and obviously that's something we don't want to do. So we're going to come back in about 12 hours, and we'll go on to what we need to do on the next stage in producing our sterile rye grain. We've had our rye grain soaking for 12 hours, and you can see it's gone a lot plumper, and we're now ready to start the cooking and sterilisation process. So to our pan, I'm going to add some boiling water, which is going to cover the rye grain up. Now, the purpose of boiling is not really part of the sterilisation process. We really want to kill off the rye grain so it doesn't germinate. So we're going to bring this up to a boil. Just put this on the hot plate. And once it's come to a boil, we're going to turn it down, and we'll just have a slight simmer for about 10 to 15 minutes. If we start doing it too long, you may start to see that the rye grains start to pop. If they pop, the inside of the grain comes out and it will go really mushy, sticky. Still works, but it's not very nice to work with. So with experience, you'll gain some idea of when it's ready to come out. Then once we've turned it off the simmer, we're going to put it out onto the bench and start the drying process. Now it's important that we do that when it's really hot, because the grain's hot, we get a lot of the water evaporating off very quickly, and it aids with the drying process. So we're going to bring that up to a boil, and we'll come back in a minute. So we've got our rye grain up to the boil. What we're going to do now, good opportunity, get some scum on the top, get a ladle, and if we just get rid of that, that's just a bit of starchy residue coming out the grains. So we can just get that off the top. Right, so now once we've reached rolling boil, we're going to turn the hot plate down a bit, and we're going to leave this on a simmer for 15 minutes. And then once we've done that, we'll come back and have a look at getting it on the bench and getting it dry, and then loading it into our jars. Right, we've been simmering for 15 minutes now, so we're going to take the pan of grain off the heat, and then we're going to move the hot plate out of the way. Right, now what we're going to do now is run the grain through a sieve into or big pan just to get the excess water off it. And now what we want to do is lay our towel out really quickly onto the bench. And then onto our towel, we're going to lay our scaffold netting. And we're then going to pour a grain out onto the bench. And give it a good spread around. Now you can see instantly starting to dry itself because it's very hot, getting a lot of evaporation. So we spread that out, very hot, all over the scaffold net. Towel will absorb the water from underneath. Steam will take the water away from above. Now this is probably going to take about 20 minutes, half an hour to start drying up properly. So we'll come back in about half an hour and see how things are going and see if it's ready to be loaded into our jars. If not, we'll leave it a little bit longer and I'll give you a little tip on how to test if it's dry enough to put in the jars. So we've given the grain half an hour to dry, and obviously a lot of water's evaporated. It feels really really good now. And just a little bit of a tip, bit of a paper towel, put it on. Should be no visible moisture in the grains if they're dry enough to then stick in the jars. Now with the scaffold netting, makes it really easy to load your jars. You can just bring all your grain together in the middle and then get it scooped into your jars. Right, that's about right, just up to the neck. If we do it any further than that, it can be quite difficult to get out once your mycelium's colonised the grain. Now, as always, I've done too much, so we always have a little bit of a backup plan. We're going to put a bit in this jar here. And I think, if I can look up here, I might have a jam jar we can use to stick the rest of the grain in. Again, scaffold netting, really easy. You can just plump it up into the middle, and then we'll use the rest of this. We'll do a little jam jar full. And the bit that's left, the chickens can have that for their breakfast in the morning. Right, so we're going to get rid of the towel. And there we have it. We have 4 different jars of rye grain, perfectly hydrated. Shouldn't sound sloppy or wet. You give it a shake, should sound like the sort of dryish, but obviously the internal structure of the grain is really hydrated and ready to accept our liquid culture and mycelium. Right, so the next stage things what we're going to do with these grain jars is we're going to sterilise them, pressure sterilise them, and that's obviously going to be at 15 psi. I like to do them for at least 1.5 hours, it's 90 minutes. So before we put them in the pressure cooker, a little half turn on the lid and the usual piece of foil over the top. And then we'll pop them in to the pressure cooker. Alright, we're finishing topping up the pressure cooker up with hot water. Now, always refer to the instructions that come with your pressure cooker, how much water to use for however long you are going to use it for. The one I've got here will take enough water, just about an inch, covering the bottom of the jars, and that'll work perfectly fine for 1.5 hours. So we've got the final bit of boiling water going into the pressure cooker. And then we're going to pop the lid on the beast. Got to let it vent for 10 minutes before we pop the weight on and get it up to 15 psi. Now we start timing from when it gets up to 15 psi, and we're going to do it for 1 hour and 30 minutes. Now once that's done, we'll come back, unload the pressure cooker and see what we have created. So we've been 1 hour 30 minutes. We've let the pressure cooker cool down. So we're going to take the lid off and see what we've got. So we take our grain jars out, which are now sterile. Just push that out of the way. We take the foil off, and there we go. Grain spawn 101. Perfectly hydrated, sterile, and ready to use to inoculate with some liquid culture. Right, once our grain jars have cooled down, we can store these in the refrigerator for whenever we want to use them to inoculate with whatever liquid culture we want. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Lots more videos coming soon from Archie's Cultures.